morning, everyone. I wanted to welcome to the Women of Washington Hebrew. Are lucky to have the Estate of Mind organizers, Robin Wagman and Marilee Fitzgerald. We have been a fundraiser for the temple and for local communities and abroad communities. And I want to thank everyone for participating in so many of our events this year. We've toned things down a lot and tried to reach out to our community and help encourage their businesses. Our boutique we used for our vendors that we've had to be able to have a way to attract customers. And now we're just trying to move on to New Year, New You. And one part, I met Marilee and Robin on a Zoom call with my Wednesday morning group, and I was so impressed with their backgrounds. They just have so much background to both of them in education and financial management and development and coaching. So I'm going to put their bios into our chat. But I just wanted to say you're in for a treat this morning, because I remember thinking, I've never even heard of these forms that I need to have. And I bought the system that they're going to show you. But really, it was just an education to sit through and listen to them talk about the forms that we're going to need and how to make it so that everything is just in one place. So if anything happened, everyone knows your wishes. So I would like to now invite Robin Wagman and Marilee Fitzgerald to introduce our planning for the expected and unimaginable.
Thank you, Randy. What a lovely introduction. And thank you to the Women of Washington Hebrew congregation. We are absolutely thrilled to be here. We know that education and knowledge and having a community which is compassionate and caring and inclusive is so much of what Washington Hebrew speaks to. And we want to share with you a little bit of how we got started with this. Marilee and I have been friends for over 40 years, and we both had pretty involved careers. Marilee was the head of the Department of Defense school system. I worked for Montgomery County for 42 years. And we were certainly actively engaged in our own personal and financial lives, but our husbands took a far greater interest in that aspect of our life than we did. And we had a very dear friend whose husband got sick and got liver cancer. And unfortunately, they knew he had a limited amount of time, and they were preparing for the unimaginable, but expected in their case. And several months after he passed away, we had a conversation with this friend of ours and said, so you had the resources, you had the time to have everything organized and put together. Was this one less thing that you had to be concerned about and worry about? And her response to us was yes and no. And we were somewhat, taken back, flabbergasted, and said, well, what do you mean yes and no? You had resources, you had time, you knew what was happening. How could that be? And she said to us, because there is so much to our lives, as simple as we try to make our lives, there's a lot to it. And that thus began our personal journey together to really figure out what being organized truly meant. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and we're educators. So of course, we have goals and we have a lot of questions to ask you and things for you to think about. If you and your loved ones were not here tomorrow, who knows what you want, where your important decisions and documents are actually located? Who knows? So these are the questions we're going to ask you. I personally know what I need. Can you answer yes? Or is it a sorta? Or is it no? Everything I have is updated. I know where everything is. Everything is secured. I can update it easily, and I have updated it. I have the right organizational tool. my trusted person or persons understand what my wishes are, where everything is, and I have total peace of mind. I can tell you that when Marilyn and I asked ourselves that question, we could answer yes to very few of those questions, which again led us to where we are today. Our goals. People always say that knowledge is powerful. We learn through our own journey that it's the right knowledge. There's a lot of information out there, and some of it is misinformation or incomplete information. So what do you need to know? You need to know what you actually need and what's missing. You need to know what decisions you need to make now and going forward. So it's not about your end of life, it's about your life. It's your day-to-day living. What do I need to know today? And what do I need to know 10, 20 years out from now? What actions do I need to take so that my documents actually say what I want them to say? There's plenty of documentation out there, but is it really explicit? Are your wishes actually stated in those documents to say what you want them to say? Have you had the critical conversations that you need to have with your advisors and your loved ones? And we all know that many of us, including us, put these conversations off for a variety of reasons. It's important that you need to be able to find everything. It shouldn't be a scavenger hunt. Marilee always talks about beat the clock. How fast can you put your hands on certain documents and certain papers if you actually need to find them? And have you really empowered a loved one so that they have quick access to the information that they need to get, and that if you cannot speak for yourself, that they can actually speak for you? And we love quotes. And I love this Eleanor Roosevelt quote, good for Washington women here. It takes as much energy to wish as it does to plan. You can think so much about the things that you need to do, but if you don't actually have a plan in place, how does it actually occur? How does it happen? Okay, Marilee, I'm passing the torch to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. I, like Robin, came to this not only because we had a friend who had a very unfortunate early life experience in her own family, but as we were developing our own system and creating it, I became the unlikely caregiver for my brother, who was unmarried, living in the mountains in Pennsylvania, miles, well, probably acres away from the next nearest home. And I had recently retired, and so I became his caregiver during his end of life experience, which at the time we began, we had no idea it was an end of life experience. And so, like Robin, many of the things that we're going to talk about today come from a personal experience. And one of them is the way in which we learned about the most important documents. And so now I'm going to put into action some of the thoughts that Robin shared with you. So how do you know what you need? When we thought about this, we thought about how we live our life. And so we categorized information into 6 major areas of our life. And we did it this way because it's the way we live our life. So we have our personal life, our financial life, healthful life, social life, and on the next slide, you'll see home life and end of life. And in each of those areas of our life, we have identified the absolute most important documents, decisions, and information that you need. This slide by no means represents all of those actions and decisions. This merely is a snapshot, but we did want to give you at least some important things to think about as you begin your journey to ensure that you have the right information on hand to live your life informed, and then to have someone take over and your wishes are followed. In personal life, we think about lots of things, mainly our proof of identity and our birth certificate, social security number, passports, and of all the information that we're going to talk about today, the absolute single most important document that you need, should something happen, a catastrophic event, and you need to pick one thing to walk out of the house with. I usually ask you what it is, but then you come back to me, but I'm going to tell you right up front what it is, and that is proof of identity. Almost anything else, you can rather easily, and maybe with a little bit of cost, gather the information back and recreate it. proof of identity is something that is the ticket to getting lots of information. So it's the wallet, if that's where the driver's license is. It's the go-to kit that you might have that has some other important documents in it. The next area of our life, and we found this quite interesting, that most of us have at least 100 passwords. And if you would have said to Robin and me, are you two folks digitally oriented? We probably would have answered no, because we see ourselves on the lower end of being technology enabled. Well, start doing a inventory of how to get into your most important documents and decisions, and you realize that you really are quite digitally oriented and in many respects dependent. And one of the key ways that you are connected to the digital life is through your passwords. And it comes into life in our everyday experience, whether it's from our bank accounts, our streaming services on our televisions, to today, Instacart and Prime delivery, all of those services that have now come into our home, your financial affairs, your health logins, anything that today that you might use and access information. And I don't know how you folks are, but Robin and I change our passwords rather frequently. And if we think we change it frequently, our husbands are the absolute worst. They change them all the time. And so with all of this information comes the need to continually update. And we're going to talk about a way in which you can do that. We also talk about pet information, heaven forbid something should happen, or if you need to access information, you certainly want to get your pet information, your vet, the hospital, things that you can easily acquire. Your military ID, for those of us who have been connected with the military, the DD-214 is as important as perhaps your proof of identity. One thing I might want to talk about here is we don't specifically, and we put out proof of identity, and I mentioned driver's license. Robin and I, she said to you, we've been friends for 40 years and we've shared many experiences together. Most recently, we shared the experience of losing our driver's license. Now, I don't know how the two of us, living in two different states, managed to lose our driver's license, but we did. Interestingly enough, if you want to go online and apply for a new driver's license, the first question they ask you is your driver's license number. And that struck Robin and I really funny, thinking, well, if we had had our number, we would have had our license. True. You can get your driver's license number if you've updated your insurance policy, but also we had it in our EMOS system, so it was quite easy to pull up and apply online. And we saved ourselves the torture of standing in line trying to get a new driver's license. The
What is this?
Michael.
This is a program.
I'm in the program. No.
Did you have a question?
Questionable.
No?
Nope. Okay.
Okay. The next area that we'd like to highlight some important information is your financial life. And as you look through this slide, you can see it's important to have your financial accounts, your bank accounts, your login information. If you pay your bills online, what the login information is for that, identifying your advisors, your trust, your beneficiary forms, and we're going to talk about the importance of the beneficiary forms a little bit later in this presentation, your insurance policies, if you own a business, your business ownership details, your property titles and deeds. Very important piece of information here to highlight on property titles and deeds. And Robin and I had an experience with a client who came to us, and he actually said that his father had, he was the executor of his father's estate. His sister was living in London, and he was the it person. And he was so impressed with how his father had organized everything, and all he did was pick up these yellow envelopes, and he was able to manage his father's estate quite easily. About a year later, he gets a letter from a tax office, and it asks him why he has not paid the tax on property, or why his father actually had not paid tax on a piece of property. This piece of property was unknown to the children. It's something that the father had forgot to put down. And so one of the important reasons for an organizational system, which Robin will talk about later, is that we forget. And I know that's hard to imagine because Robin and I never forget anything. We just lose our licenses. But you do forget things, and it is important to write them down. And it is a lot easier when your executors or your trusted loved ones have the information that you have worked so hard for and would certainly like them to be the beneficiary of, and easily, and so that they don't have to spend lots of money to acquire it. So it's important that you keep those documents handy and in order. The next area of our life is a healthful life, and we're going to spend some time on this a little bit later on. We're just going to tease up for you some of the important documents and things that you might consider having on hand. And two actually we'd like to call your attention to. When we talk about medications and your history, we're talking really here about having something quite accessible, because it's not enough to have your medications arrayed on your kitchen counter when you're ill, hoping that if something happened and an EMT had to come and you had to give your list of medications, you wouldn't be like I did when I found my brother on the kitchen floor and the EMTs came and they asked for his medications. I went to scoop up all the medications on his counter and they said, no, we don't want his actual medications. We want a listing of everything. And we want the dosage and we want the medical providers. So these are things that you can do well in advance. And even today, just keep a listing of what your medications are. The second one we'd like to call your attention to is to the HIPAA release. For those of us who have single adult children, it's important that our children complete a HIPAA release and appoint a durable power of attorney for their medical and finances. As you know, when they reach the age of 18, we no longer have access to their information. And there they may sit as an adult and you don't have access to information unless a doctor is willing to give it to you. And that's a chance today that you take. Social life, your clubs, your organizations, all of those are important and ways to identify your religious affiliations. Again, any information that you have where you have a membership that either you want someone to know about, something to contribute to, or something that you need to terminate when you are no longer willing to participate or able to participate. There are two other areas of our life that we focused on: home life and end of life. Your home life, of course, includes all your residences, your service providers, and how many of us have said, you know, and Robin has a great story here about her water heater, but how many of us have looked years later to try and find whether our refrigerators and freezers are still on warranty. And if you think that it's important for you to know, it's also important for your caregivers, because most of us, in fact, 9 out of 10 of us, according to Consumer Reports, are going to need to have someone speak on our behalf as we move along in our age. And that doesn't necessarily have to happen when we are older either. And when I was caring for my brother, one evening the heat went out and he was unable to speak for himself. And I was there with a professional care provider, and we had no idea how to turn on the heat. And we had about 3 feet of snow outside. And we had to put on the fireplaces to keep him warm that evening and wait until the morning to try and find out from neighbors who one calls when the heater goes out. That's not really a way to do something. And so when we did our organizational system, we put a lens to this, not only to keep ourselves informed, thinking about our end of life wishes, but also looking at it from a caregiver's perspective. Robin, you might want to talk a little bit here about the importance of identifying some of the service providers that folks have in their repertoire.
Sure. As Marilee said, that the majority of this really came from our own personal life experience. In fact, it was developed in that manner. And with the home, my husband several years ago said to me, you know, I think we really need to get a new hot water heater. And he said, you know, if we're out of town, they only last for like X number of years, and then they can, get all broken up and you can get a flood in your house, and you don't want that to happen. I said, well, honey, we just got a new hot water heater about 3 years ago. No, it's been like 10 years. And you know how time just goes so quickly. So I pulled out my EOMO, and yep, lo and behold, we had just had a new hot water heater 3 years ago. So it saved us the hassle and the money. But I have to say that this morning, my son-in-law and daughter spent the night at our house, which was very fortuitous. And he said, knocked on our bedroom door and said, I think there's a problem. I said, what's the problem? He said, the whole basement's flooded. Oh, it turned out there was a pipe that had leaked this morning. I ran downstairs, pulled out my EOMO, flipped through all the people that worked and serviced our home, picked out the person that we thought was most appropriate. We were fortunate. He was 15 minutes away, came to the house, fixed the leak, replaced the pipe. I said to Marilee, By 6 o'clock this morning, I was exhausted. It was quite a morning. But we also heard a story from another client, a new client of ours, whose husband was away on a trip in the middle of the ocean, and their house was hit by lightning, and they were not in town. One of the neighbors had called them, and this is a very smart, savvy woman, and she had no idea who their homeowner's policy was with. And she could not locate her husband to find and get that information to be able to address the issues that they needed to confront in a timely fashion, which was really quite shocking to both Marilee and I, but not surprising, because we're so busy with our lives that sometimes we forget and we don't spend the time doing things because we were that person. We may have known our homeowners, but we certainly did not know a lot of bits and pieces of information that we needed to know about our home and our lives in general. So, having a record of this information, knowing what it is that you really need to know and being able to access it is critical. I can't imagine what my house would have been like this morning, Marilee. You would have been doing this on your own if I did not have a quick way to get this information and call someone in to come repair my flooded basement.
Well, it's an interesting point that you make, because you were able to easily locate the plumber. But do you know that according to one article that Robin and I read, we spend the equivalent of 1 year of our life finding lost things. And those lost things include information, such as Robin just shared, driver's license, remote controls for TVs. About a year of our life is spent looking for lost things. So if you ever need some more time, you might want to think about knowing where things are as a way of bringing some time back into your life. We also ask that you think about your possessions. And these are not just valuable possessions, but even those that have sentimental value for you to identify. And then, of course, there's the end of life. And everyone today talks about terms like advanced directives, living wills, durable powers of attorney, medical and finance. And we're going to delve into those in the next slide. But this is just a listing, maybe a little more inclusive listing of some of the items that we think are the most important items that you have to have. And not only we, but others who have been in the professional business of trying to care for people during their end of life. We have here, and we're going to discuss the differences between durable powers of attorney, springing powers of attorney, and so on. So right here is just a listing of the kinds of things that you need to be thinking about. We have one up here called care choices, and these are the choices that you might want for your residential care, whether you want to be cared for at home, whether you want it to be in a nursing home or a senior living over 55 building or residence. So we think that's important, because there might be a time when someone has to help make that decision, and knowing what our decision is and what our wishes are, it might be a lot easier. Prepaid funeral arrangements, discussions. Robin talked very early on in our first couple of slides about having the important conversations. Having a good organization system actually helps you have a conversation with your loved ones. And then, of course, we include all the kinds of memorabilia that you might have for your photographs. And we say, once again, be careful. If you have a digital access to those photos, make sure that someone knows the password and other login information. Let's delve into a little bit some of those terms that we met in the previous slide, just so that you're clear about what they mean and what they don't mean, and what they do and what they don't do for you. This slide suggests that you be smart and you know the words, because these terms do matter. Today, and most frequently, you hear the term advanced directive for health. You also hear about it for finances, but right now we're going to focus on health. That really means a living will and some sort of power of attorney. And a living will identifies what you want. It doesn't give anybody the power to do anything. It just says, this is what I want. And among the things that are included in a living will, this is not all inclusive, but these are the most commonly found terms and decisions that you might include in your living will. A DNR, DNI, tube feeding, antibiotics, organ, tissue, body donation, and comfort care. These might be described. These are called and referred to as your living will. But there may come a time when you are unable to tell someone about these things. And perhaps you haven't put them in your medical records. And so you then need something to give someone the authority to act. And that's the powers of attorney. There are 3 types of powers of attorney. One is a general power of attorney, which you do when you are alive and you give someone, or you have the capacity to speak for yourself, and you give someone the authority to do something very discreet. You know, pack up my household goods, do my banking. It is a very specific kind of thing, that kind of act that you give to someone. A durable power of attorney is the single most important document that you can have. It gives someone the authority to act if you are unable to do so. If you do it today, it becomes effective today, even though it doesn't get executed, but you do give someone the authority to do just about everything today. If you don't want that and you only want someone to do it at the time when you are incapacitated, you use a springing power of attorney. It just comes into action when you are unable to speak for yourself. All 3 of these have reasons why you might choose to do them or not do them, and we suggest that you talk with your financial advisor or your state attorney to talk about and discuss the particulars, the situation for you, which one of these 3 might work best for you. But if you want something to live on when you are unable to speak for yourself, you're going to need the durable power of attorney. And you can appoint more than one person with the durable power of attorney, by the way. The next is something that some states consider part of an advance directive, but not all states. And that's the POST or MOST. It's a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment or a medical order for life-sustaining treatment. The key word here is order. An order gives this one power that the advance directives and living will do not have. This one is given for a very limited circumstance. It's given to you by your physician, and it's when you are diagnosed with a serious illness. And serious illness is defined by you and your physician. It is a doctor-ordered set of instructions. Think about it like a prescription. You should post it somewhere if you are seriously ill, where an EMT or someone who might need to care for you has this visible. This document, similarly to the living will, talks about your request for resuscitation, ventilation, tube feeding, etc. But importantly, it says whether you want to be transferred to an emergency room or to a hospital, and whether you want any pain management or antibiotics. This order, if presented to an EMT, and you have decided that you do not want to go to an emergency room or you do not want any life-sustaining treatment, the EMTs will come to your home and ensure that you have comfort. They will not take you to the hospital. But you cannot waive a living will in front of them or a document that you call an advance directive, which has that and a power of attorney attached to it. They will look at it and say, save it for when you get to the hospital. But they will perform life-sustaining treatment from the moment they are called into your home until the time that the hospital care provider recognizes your advance directive. And there could be a lot of actions that happen between that time. So the post has a great deal of power that a durable power of attorney does not have if you are in immediate need and someone wants to call the EMT in. Now, you also execute a durable power of attorney for finances. And there are many ways that this is spoken, including someone just saying a durable power of attorney, and it implies finances. But it's always important to make sure that this one is for your finances. This one allows someone, again, the authority to act on your behalf if you are not capable of acting for yourself. And of course, probably we've all heard stories. We don't need to repeat any of the terrible ones that we've heard of in our experience. We hear it on the news frequently, but you need to have a will. And your will says how you want your assets distributed and how you want your gifts given and so on. And it's the executor then who executes the decisions that you have identified in the will. Now, you have some terms. We want you to be smart and know the rules, because there are some things in here that that are not easily visible in the documents that we prepare. And two of them came to our attention. One is a representative payee with Social Security. That durable power of attorney that we just talked about for your finances, in this case, Social Security will not accept that. In the event that you need to access Social Security information for someone who is unable to speak for him or herself. So if you wanted to call and find out whether someone's Social Security benefit covers something, you want to have the Social Security check sent to a nursing home, whatever the situation may be, where you need to access information for a loved one, you cannot do it until the Social Security appoints you as the representative payee. By the way, you can do this today online if you wish. You don't have to wait until something happens. This allows someone to speak with Social Security and to manage any financial matters. For example, if you are dealing with a Social Security benefit for your spouse or for a loved one, the Social Security will give you information about not commingling the two accounts. So this is a case where we're going to tell you what the right answer is. You can do what you choose. But if you are managing the Social Security benefit for a spouse and it goes into a joint account, this is the time when the Social Security Administration is going to tell you to separate that, and that Social Security check has to go into a separate account so that it can be audited and ensure that the money that is spent is being used to care for the individual. We gave you some information here about how to contact the Social Security information. By the way, if the Social Security Administration does not approve of the individual you have identified as your representative payee, there is an appeal process. That tells you how serious they are about this, but their interests are in protecting you and the other individual from any fraud, waste, or any fraud or abuse that might be going on. And they want to ensure that just the absolute right person is representing you. But again, it can be kind of knotty and time consuming when you need to access that information in the middle of an emergency situation. The second government agency, which probably won't surprise you, has its own rules about how to contact them and how to contact someone on their behalf, and that's the IRS. And the IRS is going to ask you to complete a form, of course, 2848, as we've identified here, which gives authority to practice before the IRS. We probably have given this to our accountants and to others and haven't even given it a second thought, and that's fine. This too is that kind of thing. If you wanted to get information on someone's tax information, whether they owe any money, how to pay their debts, etc., the IRS is going to ask you to complete their form 2848. They will, and on occasion, and generally, accept a power of attorney, but not always. They will still ask you to complete the IRS form 2848, which gives them the authority to act. And then again, we've already talked about the post, that it's not an advance directive. And that's an important point to remember too, in knowing what these rules are. There's another one which isn't listed, which came to our attention actually through my sister, whose husband had early dementia and is in a long-term care facility. Many dementia patients who are diagnosed with dementia are requesting in their living will that they not be fed, eat by someone else, that the life-sustaining feeding stop the moment and the time when they are unable to feed themselves. And they put that in their living will. However, the nursing homes are governed by state laws. And right now, this matter is before the courts in many different states because the nursing homes consider feeding to be part of comfort care. And so it doesn't matter what is in your living will, they will still feed, hand feed an individual. And so now Robin and I are following the decisions on this, but it is something to keep in mind that when you are working in these areas, be very careful if you are dealing with a nursing home or another care facility that you understand what those laws and rules are as they apply to your loved one in that facility. Okay, Robin, I'm going to take it over to you.
I'm going to try to go quickly because have received a tremendous amount of information. And even though I know all this information, it still just makes my head spin as far as all the stuff that we need to know to have an organized life. Merely decided to use my family as a picture to show multi-generations. And this slide is talking about the fact that we make a lot of common mistakes when we name our healthcare proxy, our agent, our person. And that many people assume that the person that you name knows and understands what you want, knows what you have, knows where everything is, and has agreed to really handle and take on the responsibilities of being your proxy or your agent, so to speak. So it's a conversation that you need to have, and you need to have on a regular basis, and don't make the mistake of not having a conversation with that person or persons so they are up to date as far as your wishes. We see a lot of arrows going to a lot of different people. Of course, it's on my family. And one of the mistakes that people make is they pick the person who is the closest. Well, if I look at one of the closest people to me, it's my daughter, and she's very busy with children. She has a real full-time job. She is crazed. Her life is absolutely nutsy at this point in time, working about 18 hours a day. So even though she's my closest loved one, she would not necessarily be the person that would be best for me to choose for that person. Or sometimes you say, the oldest one. Well, maybe the oldest one, you live in Washington, and the oldest one lives in California. And they really are not up to date with your day-to-day life. So that wouldn't necessarily be the person to choose. Your spouse or your partner. Well, maybe you're around the same age, or maybe you're not, but it could be that you both have failing health around the same time. So maybe you choose that person to be one person, but you would choose another person in addition to that person. So you have a kind of check and balance in your system. A loved one. Oh, my son-in-law is an attorney. My other son-in-law is in finance. They would be the perfect choice. Well, maybe not. Again, it depends upon your family. And again, you need to update this information. Life is changing constantly. We know that from minute to minute. So we always need to go and look at these things and update them. We had a story a while back, Marilee and I, some family had named a person years and years ago, and they thought it was really cute, Uncle whatever his name was. And then they looked at it again 30 years later and said, wait a minute, this uncle is a cuckoo bird. He would not be the right person to choose. Again, you really need to come back and look and revisit your choices and your decisions. What may seem appropriate for you today was not necessarily what was appropriate 20 years ago when you actually named that person. All right, moving on really quickly. In terms of putting your hands on your stuff, locating it, reading it, sorting it, and storing it. I want to say that no matter what you do, always err on the side of holding on to things that you feel are important to hold on to. Many of the documents that you need, you can access online. And again, with passwords, you can always get hard copies or save hard copies. Always err on the side of caution. If you think you might need it, hold on to it a little bit longer. Talk to an advisor. See if it's something that you really should hold on to. If you have something with your personal ID, social security number, we all know, shred it, shred it, shred it. Not a question about that. And again, use your advisors, use the professionals in your life, and get their advice as far as what they think you should be doing with a lot of your information.
I think I tell Robin all the time when she speaks about whether you should save, shred, toss, or store, I say to her, you should add and move. If you move, these decisions become really important. I moved from a 5,000 square foot home into a 1,600 square foot apartment. I don't have a great deal of storage. I've become much more digitally focused than Robin has at this point, but I don't have room to keep those landscaping plans that my husband wanted to keep from 2 houses ago. Ask me why, I have no idea. Or, the children's first teeth, or their hair, a lock of hair. I mean, these are things that we kept for years because we had the space to do it. Some of these decisions are defined by your new life stage, and we became a little more aggressive.
Everything, they have it.
Yeah.
Just for sake of time, let's move on. Okay, so things that we keep forever. I think it's pretty clear. Our birth certificates, social security cards, divorce degrees, marriage, citizenship paper. Those are the kinds of things that you keep forever. things that you keep until you no longer need it. But Marilee just mentioned her landscape plans from years ago, many houses ago. Things that, vehicle titles that you no longer have the vehicle, real estate information, you no longer even own the property, things of that need, medical bills, that were, several years ago, or even at the beginning of the year, you no longer need them. Get receipts. You can go online and access information. Again, err on the side of being cautious, but those are the kind of things you don't need. Keep until they're expired, your passports, your license, global entry, car insurance. Again, you want to double check and make sure how long they're going to be good for. You may need to re-up some of these things when you look at them. But again, once they're expired, you no longer need them. Taxes for 3 years, unless your accountant tells you that there's some consideration you need to be thinking about, that you need to hold on to things for an extended period of time. Other than that, toss it, toss it, toss it, rip it up, shred it, toss it. Let's move on. Okay, now you got it. Now, what do we need to do? You need to be informed. As Marilee and I decided to get informed, you need to take an active role. You need to work together, whether it's with your partner, whether it's a friend, whether it's an advisor. You need to work on short and long-term goals. Divide and conquer. You can't do it all by yourself. One of you take one part of the life, one of you take another part, come together, talk about it. Maybe it's with your kids, maybe it's with a group of friends, maybe it's with your partner, whatever makes sense for you, and get an organizational tool. You could have all this information, but if it's not focused with an organizational tool, where does it live? Where does all this information live? How do you access it? How do you get to it? And be transparent. Find, a system where you have security, where you can save it and you can share it. And why? Why do we bother doing this? Why do we need this? Because number one, and we all know stories, it improves the relationships that you have with your loved ones. It saves you money. Marilee talked about the time that we spend looking for things. And more importantly, it really gives you a peace of mind. And we know that you can't put a dollar amount on peace of mind, feeling secure, feeling safe, knowing that you have everything together and everything that you have is organized and ready for you to access. Okay, getting the right organizational tool. What do you need to be thinking about as far as putting all of this together? You want something that's very easy to use. You can use fillable forms. And let me go back and just say that when Marilee and I were looking for an organizational tool, we didn't just need something that we could fill in and put information in, but we needed something that would guide us and inform us as far as what we needed to do and where it needed to be. So something that was easy, something that had a lot of options, something that we could easily update, because as we said, it wasn't about our end of life, it was the way we were living our life now and how we could, maintain all this vital data and information, and something that we had that we could keep everything in one place. It gave us a focus. So the system should identify what you have. I think you've heard this mantra from us several times in today's presentation. What you have, what you need, what's missing, and where it is. Something that gives you a structure to provide the talk. What's the talk? It depends upon your family, talking about all of these vital issues. And we're not suggesting that you need to tell your kids exactly the dollar amount of what you have unless you want to, but they should know how to access your vital pieces of information, know who to contact, know what your wishes are, your desires, so that this communication makes everybody feel comfortable and secure. And it teaches a sense of literacy so that it helps you and it guides you through this entire process. And again, that transparency for your family. And it needs to really hit all these areas. A lot of the materials that were out there, Marilee and I found, either focused on finances or end of life. But as you know, and as we're pointing out and talking about today, our life has many different, as Marilee calls them sometimes, silos, many different, we call them life things, many different compartments that she's going to speak to. Your personal, financial, health, social, home, and end of life. Marilee.
Well, the reason I brought up this slide is not only to show the different categories, we talked about them previously, but to show you, to make the point about the interconnectedness of all of these. Let's work backwards. If you wanted to fill out to complete a will, you need to identify your possessions and who's going to get what. You need to identify maybe how you want your end of life handled in terms of your spiritual affiliations. We talked about the importance of having your durable power of attorney, which today often appends your wills. You're talking about your trust perhaps and who's going to be managing your affairs. Also, you're talking about your durable power of attorney, and then again, your proof of identity and some other important documents that you may need to have to support your will. So you can't just do a will today and not have any other parts of your life organized. I mean, you can do that, but it becomes quite time consuming and very hard to do. And when you get to your estate attorney, you're going to end up having to go through these steps. And so it is important that, and that's why we organize them this way. And perhaps the most important reason is that your life is not lived in a silo. It is connected. It's connected almost at every juncture. And so many of our decisions are dependent on decisions of and documents that we have in other parts of our life.
Okay. All right. So I don't know about you, but I'm almost 70 years old. And I used to get my teeth cleaned every 6 months. And my dentist said, you're too old for that. You need to come every 3 or 4 months. And she talked about it being my hygiene. So we use the term estate hygiene. And again, making it a habit, something that you need to do on a regular basis. You need to have an organization system, which we talked about. You need to be prepared. I don't need to read these to you. You can see it on, on your screen. You need to periodically review and update your documents. If you did something 20 years ago, 30 years ago, my bet is that life has changed considerably and you need to take action. And this is important, making it a habit, sitting down. We used to go to movies. I remember that. Remember that, Marilee? Used to go to movies. Now have a date and sit down and talk about these various issues. Maybe it's updating your passwords. Maybe maybe you had a new grandchild. Something else occurred in your life. You need to make it a habit of going back and updating and really revisiting what your interests are, what's important to you. I have to throw out, we had a meeting years ago with someone who wanted to see our system, and both very bright, very interesting, involved individuals. And the husband said to the wife, no worries, everything's on spreadsheets, everything's organized, everything's put together. And they're both attorneys. And she said, well, honey, I think that's great, but I don't understand your spreadsheets. And he looked at her and said, what do you mean you don't understand my spreadsheets? No, honey, I don't. And he said, no problem. I'm going to run upstairs and get the laptop. Honey, I don't know the password to your laptop. And he looked at her, kind of incredulous, and said, what do you mean you don't know the password? Well, our lives get very busy, and it's not always intentional, though in some families, perhaps it might be, but in this family, it wasn't. And we really need to take the time, make it a habit to make sure that we are really updating, checking, knowing what it is that we need and where everything is located.
One important point here, Robin, on beneficiaries, your will does not supersede your beneficiary. So if you've identified your mother, as I did, my deceased mother, by the way, of 20 years, as the beneficiary of an insurance policy I took out when I was 24 years old, that will have to go to probate to change. So, I mean, I've changed it since then. So your beneficiaries are most important. The will does not trump the beneficiaries.
So Randy talked about our system. Let me talk about it really quickly, and Marilee can pipe in. We've designed it as, you talked about the lens as far as looking at organizational system. It comes with checklists, which tracks and monitors your progress and identifies the needs. It educates you. It has worksheets that are fillable, that guide you along, progress in terms of your own personal estate. It comes in a binder, so everything's in one place, which you can see from the graphic. It has different accessories. It has file folders and labels if you like using a lateral filing cabinet. It has a USB drive if you're interested in doing things in that manner. It has storage envelopes if you want to put things in your safe deposit box, and lots of resources so that you can continue to educate yourself and your family and loved ones. It's not a subscription. You get it once, you use it forever. We hope use it forever, ever, because we love the Women of Washington Hebrew. We've given you a discount for our system. Marilee's phone number is on the bottom of your screen. You can call us if you have any questions. You can go to our website with this code and you can get 20% off of our system. Marilee, you want to add something to this? see if we have a few minutes for some questions.
Only to say that it's not a database, so we don't keep any of your information. Even the documents that you get, they're all yours, and you save them as you wish. We have a couple of questions, Robin. You might take time. Someone has asked, she's curious about the rationale for the statement for the tax records and tax supporting documents only needing to be kept for 3 years, when it seems that most advisors say 7. And I would say yes. We keep ours 7 years because our advisor says to keep them for 7 years. But most commonly, you don't need to keep your records more than 3 years. There may be reasons why you keep them for more than 3 years, and those are discussions that you have with your financial advisor. And as she points out in here, it's not just the tax filing, it's all the supporting documentation.
In fact, we just had a conversation, Marilyn, about that this past week, because again, people talk 7, people talk 3 for those various reasons.
And then we have
a question. It's asking the same question I actually asked you, is how would you compare and contrast the program, your program, to Everplans?
Do you want to take that, Robin?
Everplans is a wonderful program. It's full of great information. We know Abby Schneiderman well. It is an online web-based system. It is a subscription system. It is not, from my thinking, for me at my age, it was not a big picture, which is something that I wanted. I wanted to be able to see what it is I needed to do and populate it in a big picture format for myself. And I was not particularly trusting of putting my information online. Although if this is something that you're comfortable with, I mean, certainly, and a subscription is something that you're good with, certainly look at Everplans. It was not something that worked for me or for Mary Lee, which is why we ended up developing our own system, but it is a wonderful program.
Thank you.
Want to add to that?
And then we have another question. Is this system good for couples to use together, or should each spouse partner complete their own EMOS system?
Want to get that, Mary?
The answer probably, in most circumstances, you complete one. My husband and I share one EOMO. But there could be circumstances where you would each fill out your own. And one of the advantages of our system is that you can print multiple forms, so that if you wanted to create another set or a supplemental sheet to add some particular information that applies to one and not the other, for example, on businesses might be an example of that, you can do so. And that comes to you for a lifetime. You can just download those. Once you get the system, you just download those from the website and you have access to the additional forms. But in most circumstances, wouldn't you agree, Robin, one is probably
absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to throw out, going back to that question about Everplans, is for me, I'm more of a paper and pencil oriented person. And I wanted something that I could easily put my hands on and access on a regular basis. Like, for instance, this morning I shared with you, I had to pull it out and get all that information that I had easy access to. So that's what worked for me. And it has the ability that you can do things using the USB if that's more of your interest. But again, we don't save any of the information. You choose to save it your way.
I put mine on the USB. The USB drive that we give you comes populated with the checklist and worksheets. I work off of that, and I keep that in my desk drawer. And I also have a copy that is offline at my sister's, not in my apartment building, in the event that some catastrophic event happens here. And I also have told our executor, who is our son, where it's located. Now, I haven't given it to him because it would end up in his sock drawer and I wouldn't be able to find it. He wouldn't be able to find it if he needed it. But nonetheless, he knows exactly where the information is. And on that USB, I have photographed important documents that I wanted to have easy access to, like my passport in the days when we were traveling. In case I lost it, it would be quickly on that thumb drive that he could access for us. And it has the advantage of being able to save it to a cyber vault as well. You could just upload the information to your cyber vault if that's what you wish. And I would say that would be a difference in the two systems. We don't own the information. So once you stop subscribing to Everplans, they retain your information, and then you have a printout of the last information that you have. So you're still left then with how do you organize it if you want to stop paying on the subscription. So they're just different ways if you're more digitally focused, or if you want the ability to save and store it as you wish, are probably the two major differences.
Great, thank you. We have two quick questions, and then I would like to invite Rabbi Shankman has a beautiful prayer for the beginning of 2021.
Wonderful. We
So
want to thank you, Randy, for the opportunity. We had a
I've loved having you here and I hope everyone has gotten as much out of it as I have. There are certain parts of the system that I've used, and you've inspired me to get back to it and complete it.
we're always
Along with a walk. So the two questions are, when you retire, will someone else continue the business?
I don't think we're going anywhere. And
Yes, yes,
yes.
yes, we have.
And then the other two questions are,
They're identified.
I love it, in the system. How many, I'm sorry, can you provide handouts, and how much is the system? And I am happy to send in my letter today after the program all of this information, whatever you'd like to share.
Okay. Really?
Yes, we can certainly make our slides available to you. Happy to do that. The cost of this system is it's $199.99. We've given a 20% discount to WHC, and that includes shipping and tax.
Nice.
There is another piece of the system if you just wanted to download the forms from the website and not have the entire organizational system, and that option is also on the website for $59.99 and at 20% off. So that comes down to about $45.
The normal system's $249.
Right. Normally it's $249.99. One of the, you want to think carefully about just downloading the forms from the website. If you are digitally oriented, that's an option. If not, you might want to take a look at the other system, which gives you the option of using all three modalities: downloading the additional forms from the website when you need additional forms, using the USB drive if you want to do it as I do it, or if you want to do a hard copy as Robin does it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I really loved having both of you come in this morning and help us start 2021 with a bang. And I also wanted to invite everyone to our rescheduled Best Calb. No one will tell you this but me, book club on author speaker on Friday. The book is adorable. If you haven't read it, you will hear your grandmother's voice in you. Or your aunts and your mother. So I hope that many of you can join us for that as well. And thank you, Rabbi Shankman, for helping us with this first week of 2021.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Oh, you're welcome. So I wanted to share a beautiful prayer, which if you joined us for the annual joint service that we held this year with Temple Sinai and Addis Israel, I shared this prayer as well at the end, along with my colleagues who joined me. Before we do that, I just want to say a quick thank you to Marilee and Robin. It's certainly, it's a great way for us all to get started on thinking about, as we all do when we set intentions at the beginning of a new year, to think about the ways in which we want to be better organized, or think about how we plan for the future. And it's really, it's helpful to have the what we call the tachlis, the concrete ways that we're going to do that. And then also, I think, and actually worked out well, we're doing this at the end, to think as well on the spiritual, and how we welcome in the year. So this prayer is actually, it was written in specifically and intentionally as an end of 2020. We needed a prayer for the end of 2020. and a welcoming prayer for 2021. And it is by, as many of you have heard me quote many times, Alden Solovey, who is a brilliant poet and Reform Jewish liturgist. So this is entitled Wildly Unimaginable Blessings. Let us dream wildly unimaginable blessings, blessings so unexpected, blessings so beyond our hopes for this world, blessings so unbelievable in this era that their very existence uplifts our vision of creation, our relationships to each other, and our yearning for life itself. Let us dream wildly unimaginable blessings, a complete healing of mind, body, and spirit, a complete healing for all, the end of suffering and strife, the end of plague and disease. When kindness flows from the river of love, when goodness flows from the river of grace, awakened in the spirit of all beings, when God's light radiating holiness is seen by everyone, let us pray with all our hearts for wildly unimaginable blessings, so that God will hear the call to open the gates of the garden, seeing that we haven't waited, that we've already begun to repair the world, in testimony to our faith in life, our faith in each other, and our faith in the Holy One. Blessed be God's name. May it be your will, God of our fathers and mothers, that the year ahead bring a pervasive and complete peace on all the inhabitants of the earth, beyond all the dreams of humanity. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Shankman. And next
Beautiful.
we have Brenda Holt, and she's going to help us declutter. So I hope to see many of you next Tuesday. Have a great week, and
Thank you.
thank you for joining us. Thank you again, Marilee and Robin.
Thank
Great
you.
to see everyone.